Why don't we make dyes in the US?
Absolutely. That's probably, so this is kind of the crescendo. This is the peak, right? So this is why everybody asks. So there used to be, so dye cut, making a dye is a process called photochemical etching. So that process is a common industrial process. It's used in a lot of different places. It's used in a lot of different industries. A lot of products that you have at home have products that are made using photochemical etching. Just like I told you earlier about the paper mills basically telling us we don't want your business. Um, there are photochemical etching is kind of, if you think of it as like being a woodworker, okay? So I can be a rough carpenter, right? So I can frame houses, and that's one skill set. And then I can also be a finished carpenter, which I do the cabinets and the trim in the house. That's a different skill set. Or I can make furniture. That's another skill set. There's all these different skill sets when it comes to like photochemical etching. So that process, there are photochemical etchers in the US. There are factories that do it in the US. And they make parts for Boeing and airplanes, and they make car parts for Tesla. Um, there's probably, I might be off, but I'm guessing that there's probably 40 or 50 photochemical etching factories in the US, and none of them make dyes like consumer dyes like we make. There used to be one company that did that. I have contacted many of those factories. One in Indiana that I know, a couple in California. There's a few. There's a second one. There was one that was here in Phoenix, and I'll talk about here in a second. There's another one here in Phoenix that I've reached out to them. Basically, none of them, either they haven't answered any requests, calls, emails, voicemails, texts, or the ones that have said, hey, we have no interest in doing that at all. Because they might take a sheet of, they might take, if this were a die, this would be it would be a pretty big die, but it would probably sell for $49, $39. If it's half that, maybe that sells for $29, right? They're selling that photochemical etch product for $100. They're selling this for $150. So the cost, because it's going in an airplane or it's going in a car or it's going in some other industrial product. So oh, thank you so much. So yeah, so here, dies. So this die this is what size is this? This is an S5. So what does this sell for? 39 bucks, give or take a little bit. So this die would probably cost, if anybody wants a die made in the US, I'll happy to do it. This die would probably cost you 80, 90, $100 easily. That's what we would pay from the factory, not what we would sell it for. But we would pay, 80, 90, $100 for something like this. So there was a factory here locally in Phoenix that made dies. That's the reason Spellbinders is in Phoenix. Spellbinders started in Cleveland, Ohio, and Jeff and Stacy, when they started the company, they moved the whole company to Phoenix because the people that made dyes were right down the street from us. I've been to that factory many times until it closed last year. So that factory made dyes, and they were super expensive, really expensive. Some people use them, and the cutting edge on the dye was not nearly the quality of what we can get from China. So the China product is way better product quality, and it's a third the price, is the reality. So those dyes were really good for aperture dyes, open aperture dyes. So if you're just cutting an outside edge, those dyes were fine for that. But they couldn't get the blade thickness thin enough, because the thicker the blade, the more pressure that it takes, the harder it is to cut. So they couldn't get blades thin to do detailed dyes like we like you like our customers like. So if you're doing an aperture dye, they're fine to do that. but they're way more expensive. If you're doing a detail die, half the time they didn't even work. So we tried to use them. They made our stamps, they made our stencils until they went out of business, or they made part of them. The other factory that we use is another company located here in Phoenix that makes stencils and makes stamps. And so we do manufacture as much as we can in the US. When it comes to dyes, so we have, trust me, we have gone through the whole exercise. We looked at opening our own factory in the US. I'm going to run down the math with you real quickly of what it would cost to that. Before I get to the math on the dye factory, I was reading an article. So we're in Arizona, Phoenix, obviously, right? We are there's a lot of copper in Arizona, right? So copper, everybody knows copper. It's in your wiring and it's in your products. You know, it's electricity, copper, big in Arizona. So I was reading an article this weekend that talked about copper mining because it's a big deal in Arizona. The time that it takes to open a copper mine from the time I write up my proposal and give it to the EPA until the time the EPA comes back and says, okay, you can now open your copper mine is 29 years. 29 years. That's your
How is that
government.
even possible? 29
That's
years.
your efficient government at work. So 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 before I even talk about the costs of doing that, the regulations behind opening a factory in the US is insane. We did look at it. We explored it. So with that, you know, uh Yana, you've known me for a very long time. How many days have I been in a bad mood?
Never. Gosh, I envy your good mood, to be honest. Not a
So
single day. I have, even the day when you broke your foot helping me move my furniture, you were not in bad mood.
right. Try. Yeah, so if I have a weakness, it's probably that I'm an eternal optimist. It's like, you know, I think, you know, I might deal with the reality of a bad situation, but I think there's going to be a positive outcome of it. So, right. So, even though we knew it would probably be an uphill battle, we explored making dyes in the US. So if you look at it, okay, so to the think about just going to walk through a big picture of what it would mean doing that. So the first thing you would do is you go buy a piece of land. Okay. So a piece of land, you'd need between 1 and 2 acres to do a dime factory. So that and you'd need to be in a metropolitan area, right? So someplace that has some population. If you look all over the country, if it's Phoenix, it would probably cost you from $3 million to $10 million for a piece of land that would be big enough to and commercially zoned to be able to do that. Okay, so $3 to $10 million just to buy a piece of land. Then you have to start. You do your design process, probably two, three, four, $500,000 to do the design of the building in the facility. The building is probably $3 to $5 million to do that. Then I have to buy the equipment, right? Guess where I'm going to buy the equipment to make dyes from? From China. So, so the only place in the world that makes that equipment is in China, the etching equipment. So it defeats the purpose a little bit. And that equipment is, you know, $3.5 million or so, something like that. Then you have to build a water treatment facility because of the contaminated water that comes off of the manufacturing process of this. And the water treatment facility is probably another $1 million. And then who knows how it could take 29 years. I'm assuming it's going to take 2, 3, 4 years to get the permitting from the EPA to actually be able to build this building. So, and then in that 2, 3, 4 years, now we're paying all these tariffs and we have no money to actually build the building and make the dyes and all that kind of stuff. So that's a separate story. And so now I'm ready to make this. And being from Ohio, I mentioned earlier, you know, we saw the steel industry decimated by policies from the 70s, 80s, 90s that basically destroyed the steel industry. So the type of steel that is used to make dyes isn't made in the US. So now I have to buy this steel from China. And so, and the chemicals that I use to make this steel, they're from China too. And so, as you can see, it's not as easy as saying, let's just open a factory in China. So, if I hated everything and I just wanted to make it here in the US, I'm going to need about 10, $12 million to do that, which nobody in our industry has. And I'm probably going to need 3, 4, 5 years with construction, land acquisition, EPA regulation, building a water treatment facility, and to get back to where we are today. So it's a long-term play. It's a long-term vision. It's a long-term thing. If the government gives us proper assistance in that, if the government is a partner with this, that could be something that we could explore. However, just like I said earlier, there was a company here that made dyes, and the quality of their dyes were not nearly as good. And I've been to that factory. They're literally down the street from us here. I was personal friends with the guy who ran the factory. We'd have lunch, once a month, once every 2 months. Great guy. They did a lot of other work for us. They didn't make our dyes. Um, the factory was, most people have this conception that America's factories are fantastic and Chinese factories are disgusting. And that is completely opposite in this case. The U.S. manufacturing here, the factory that did make dyes, the photochemical etching that were done here, there's there they're not that clean. They were not that well maintained. They had a really difficult time finding staff for them. That was probably one of the big reasons that they closed, is they couldn't find enough people to actually manufacture the dyes and work in the factories, or work in the factory. And it was it was not clean. The stamp area was clean. The lasers where they make all of the stencils, those were clean. The photochemical etching area where they made the dyes was very dirty, and was a really difficult business. Um, Contrary, when I go to China, the factories that we use are they're white glove masks. Nobody in the U.S. factory had masks. Nobody had personal protection equipment. I've been to other factories in the US where that's a rare thing. You go to China, everybody's got the gloves on, everybody's got masks on, everybody's got goggles on. It's white, clean rooms. The facility, you could eat off the floor in some of them. There are some that are not as clean, that are closer to the US one. But so the quality of the product, they're able to get those really super thin lines, which allows you to get more detail, which allows you to make greater cuts. It's really a fascinating process to see it all come about. So their quality is phenomenal. They've been doing this for years and years. And another thing too is, like, the craft industry isn't so big that we keep these factories busy all the time. The factories that make our dyes make tons of other things. So that's one of the problems. Like, if you bring something back to the US, if you want to start a factory that's making dyes, there's not enough production, there's not enough dye business to keep a factory busy all the time. We'd have to get into making other things as well, which that's not really our business. So there are a lot of challenges in doing that. So I would love it. We've done it with everything that we can bring back to the US. We've certainly done it. We have those conversations with US factories now, ones that want to work with us, get our business. Ranger, great company. Superior, great company. The guys that make our dyes or make our stamps and our stencils, fantastic companies. There's people in Georgia that make stamps, people in Illinois that make stamps. Stamps a great business. They do really good quality work, great companies to work with. Dyes, that process is a little different story. So